It excludes slaves and anyone who is foreign born. So if you're not born in Greece, you don't count. Okay, in Greece there is a huge development of arts. Yeah.
When you say foreign born, does that mean just Greece or just Athens or part of wherever it was?
Foreign born, typically within that. Well, I shouldn't say that universally, because each polis had its own rules and regulations. But when referring to it would be polis, I would say, for Athens and Sparta. If you're looking at some of the smaller polis, then you could have people, from who had migrated like within Greece. But Sparta and Athens were really, really strict on their requirements, and they didn't like each other. They didn't want to support each other. So, but philosophy starts to take a huge hold in this excuse me, in this country. How many of you guys have heard of Socrates, Plato, Aristotle? It's like, right, everyone's heard of these people. Okay, so what they start doing is they start saying, okay, there was this kind of culture where everything comes down through the king, right? It's divine intuition, like God has appointed the king. And these philosophers really started saying, hey, let's really look at, let's do some experience. Let's look at science. Let's look at the combination of science and religion and how they meet together. And they really started looking at scientific inquiry and saying, okay, if we do this, then this happens, right? Or if, we have a ruler and they're saying do this, the question is why? Why do I need to do that? And so philosophy really develops in the sense of it's really, in its essence, is thinking about things, not necessarily not doing directly what you're told, but it's like, what is the reason? What is the logic behind doing it? Everything is really practical. And if you take a philosophy class in college, which you guys will have a humanities requirement, you'll realize that there are no answers in philosophy, and it is so frustrating. You're like, I wrote this 10-page paper on this, and they're like, I'm like, was it right? And they're like, oh, so everyone's right. What are you talking about? And so it's really interesting how philosophy, this is kind of the origins of that philosophy. So Socrates, 470 BC. Sometimes you'll see BC. Typically, with the new publication of textbooks, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to take religion out of time. And so they have changed this to BCE, before the Common Era. So you'll see that if you see BCE, and you're like, what are you talking about? How many of you guys knew that? Or is that coming? It's like half of you. Okay. It's kind of coming down, it's coming around. I think it'll be more popular in the next 10 years. It'll start to be the norm. But basically, Socrates said reason must be our guide, not emotion, and sought to teach people how to think for yourself. Okay, how to think. Okay, logic, reason, not emotional. We're not tied to this emotional, but it needs to be logical and thought out. So we see the Socratic method, which, how many of you guys, English does this a lot, participates in like a Socratic method. Have you guys heard of that? Okay, where you kind of like, do you guys, have you done where you sit in a circle?
Socratic seminar.
A Socratic seminar, where you kind of like throw an idea out there, and people are kind of, you have varying different opinions. Some teachers will do it where you have, there'll be certain tasks, or people will be in charge of certain tasks. But basically, what it begins with is asking some questions. Okay, students can say, hey, I disagree with that opinion. What about this? And it really is a discussion that is posed just to get thinking. And there doesn't necessarily have to be an answer, right? At the end of the Socratic seminar, it really is like, here's what we talked about. These were some controversial issues that came up. And sometimes there are no, we all feel kind of like this. Sometimes there is. But it basically forces people to defend their thoughts and ideas, okay? And justify why they're saying things. You can't just run around saying something not based on some logic or some sort of opinion that is grounded in truth. So truth is the most important thing. Okay, that is truly the most important thing. And then he was actually arrested, and he ended up having to drink hemlock. Do you guys know what hemlock is? Poison? Okay. At 70. Which, I mean, he lives to 70. He lived a pretty good life. You know, back then, 70 was pretty old. So he, I would say that he fulfilled his life. Plato was Socrates' best student. Okay. He was basically the first official philosopher. He wrote about religion, ethics, logic. Okay. He disliked democracy, okay, direct democracy, because he said the lower classes, okay, they're not very smart. Lower classes, they don't really know how to run things, and basically, if you let the lower class run things or you give them too much freedom, they create chaos. So, and it's we need to have order and structure. Okay, in this. So Plato was not necessarily, didn't follow the exact kind of teachings of Socrates. He believed that people have to think of the importance of the state before their individual, values, wants, desires. So I'm going to do what's best for my nation, okay, as being a United States citizen, before I'm going to do what's best for myself. Do you guys think that people do that? No. Yeah. So it's a really hard, especially when you live in a capitalistic economy like we do. I mean, it's really hard to say, okay, everyone's going to give up, their personal freedoms or their personal rights in order to do what's best for the nation, right? That doesn't necessarily pan out. And the government should only represent the very smartest people in the world, in the polis or in the nation. Very smart, only smart people. Okay, and they have to have the most education. Okay, who does this eliminate? Lower class. Who else? Middle class, probably. What about gender?
Girls.
Yeah, females, not in the picture, cannot be part of government, okay? And really couldn't go to college at this time either. Women were basically the equivalent of slaves. I think I might have jumped one. Nope, okay. Theory of ideals, universals exist in all men, truth, justice, beauty, okay? Appearance and reality are not the same thing, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. And then he kind of said that the real world was constructed from these ideals, okay? The soul is divided by three parts. You have, intelligence, you have your will, and then you have appetite, or another word for that would be desire. So you were broken up into those three different parts. And then moral virtue indicates a healthy soul. So you have to be virtuous, right? Want to do the right thing, at all times.